Any questions on the material that we covered so far? Alma, you okay?
Just a little sleepy, that's all.
Okay. I didn't know if you had a rough night or what. All that studying, huh? All right. So we just had 2 more people join the class. So we're going to cover chapters 7 and 8 today, because the last 3 or 4 chapters are very, very short. So we'll probably be in class today for a little over an hour. So I wanted to make sure everybody is, I looked at the stuff. Seems to me like everybody's doing good. And don't forget, the last day of class, I'm going to do a major study session. So to help prep you for the certification exam. Okay. Between now and then, what I'd like you to do is send me an email. Okay. And let me know which email address you want me to mail your certification to. Okay. So it doesn't have to be the COD address. It can be your personal email address, but send it to my COD email, jbreakbill@ collegeofthedesert.edu, because when I print up the certifications, I'll just email them to you electronically. And I found out that if I depend on the college to mail them, it gets lost in the abyss somewhere and we never find them. So I went to emailing them electronically, then you can print them out on whatever paper that you'd like. All right, so please make sure I get your email addresses before the last class meeting. All right, let's get into chapter 7, which I believe is emergency response. So let me pull up my screen, make sure everybody can see it. Okay, so chapter 7, now we're going to cover emergency response. In this lesson, we're going to be discussing methods of communicating with dispatch safely, the use of a route selection and warning devices, the safe roadway command and clearing an intersection, and safe patient transport in all situations. Just like with every lesson in EMS and fire and law enforcement, all of the exam questions that you will receive are mapped to one of these learning objectives. So if you take the time and study the learning objectives, you will ace the written exam. So this chapter we're going to focus on, and by the time you complete your study, you should be able to describe, okay, how to communicate with dispatch safely and effectively during an emergency response, recognize the importance of route selection to a safe and smooth response, describe how to use your warning devices, which include lights and siren appropriately, and then you should be able to demonstrate roadway command for maneuvering around in traffic. We should also outline how to safely clear an intersection against a red light. Remember, we talked about using the Smith system, the 5 keys of defensive driving. And then you should be able to explain how to transport patients safely and comfortably in emergency situations. All right, let's take a look at this diagram. At the beginning of the lecture, okay, I'm going to ask you some questions. The purpose of this skill is to give you guys the opportunity to apply your critical thinking skills in a safe environment. I'm going to present this scenario to you, and then I'm going to ask you to answer some questions. Okay, so here is the scenario. Okay, and I'm going to call on you at random. You get a call on a rainy spring day for a 4-year-old boy whose mother found him unresponsive, not breathing, and cyanotic near some small toys. You and your partner plan out the route, and then you turn on the vehicle's lights and siren and start to head to the scene. After a few minutes, dispatch contacts your unit and tells you that the address has changed due to a poor quality phone conversation. This means you have been traveling in the wrong direction for about 3 blocks. You turn your ambulance around and you move quickly down the block, clearing traffic to the right as you approach an intersection with a red light in your direction and traffic blocking your path. You cross left to center into the lanes of oncoming traffic. All right, so that is the scenario. And then I'm going to ask probably about 5 or 6 questions. Okay, so let's start with you, Alma. Let me ask you this is all your opinion, okay? It's there's no right or wrong answer. What is the maximum speed of travel in this situation and why? If you were driving the ambulance, what would be your maximum speed? And why would you be traveling at that speed as you approach this intersection?
As I want to approach the intersection, I think I'd want to slow down considering I'm having the red light on my side and it's not wrong for the traffic on the other to continue going. Um, I'm not exactly sure on the number, but I just know that I want to slow down. Kind of coming to a stop, but not really.
Okay. Rob, this question's for you. Where should you first stop your ambulance prior to entering the intersection and why?
Wait, I'm going to pass on the left. So I'm going to stop right at the
It's called the limit line.
right, the limit line right there. I'm going to stop right there and make sure there's no oncoming traffic either direction. And so it's safe to proceed.
Okay, Emily Acosta, here's your question. How should you proceed through the intersection and why?
I think I would go like kind of, I don't know about the speed, but cautious enough to mind the people coming from the opposite direction because they have the green light, but
Mhm.
also fast enough to get out of the way of oncoming traffic.
All right, Anika, which warning devices should you use and why?
I'd probably just use lights and sirens just so they're aware of like the fact that you're around and that you're possibly close
Okay.
to them.
Okay, all of you are in the right, heading in the right direction. That's great. Good answer. All right, Mackenzie. All right, let me ask you your question. What role should your partner play in helping you negotiate the intersection?
They could help you by looking in both directions and clearing the way for you.
Okay, absolutely correct. Now you've got 2 sets of eyes instead of 1. Marilyn, the last question. All right, I saved the best for last. What other issues, okay, are you and your partner thinking about as you clear this intersection?
Maybe pedestrians. I don't know. There's some little dots on the diagram. I don't know. I think they're pedestrians.
Those are pedestrians, you're right.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would hope my partner's aware too and helping me, like kind of cross the intersection too by him looking left and right, maybe seeing something that I can't see, maybe a pedestrian or a child, skateboard or bicycle rider or something like that.
Yeah, this scenario that's up on your screen is very common for emergency vehicle operators. And so this is why I wanted to put this up here and ask you these questions, because it takes everybody in the ambulance, the driver and the partner, because, you know, some of the things, you know, you look at this intersection, first of all, before you even go into the opposing lane of traffic, you got to look across the street, make sure that those drivers have stopped, okay? And they're not proceeding through the intersection, which they have, okay? But it's the cross traffic now that you've got to worry about. And you've got to pull up to the limit line, like Rob stated earlier, and make sure that everybody sees you. Sometimes you might have to put your ambulance, you might want to switch the siren from a wail to a yelp, which is a high-low, high-low. And then to get the people's attention, some ambulances have air horns. And then once the cross traffic has stopped, then you can edge out a little further and make sure that the pedestrians aren't in the crosswalk. All right. And a lot of times what I'll do is I will look at the pedestrian traffic light to determine whether I've got a stale green light or a fresh green light. And so these are just some of the things that when you get out there in the field and you actually get behind the wheel with your training officer, these are some of the situations that you're going to face daily. So, you know, you might want to take some time after class and go back, okay, and review some of these scenarios, because they're going to ask you as part of your probationary interview, okay, how they'll throw up intersections and ask the same questions I get. All right, so to conclude this skill, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to play this video clip that depicts the exact scenario that we just talked about, okay, and how the emergency vehicle operator chose to negotiate the intersection. All right, so let's take a look at this. One more time. America, what did this driver do wrong?
I don't think he slowed down at all. He kind of just crossed.
Yeah, I don't even think he did what Rob stated earlier for his question. I don't even think he stopped and cleared the intersection, nor did I think his partner was helping him check left, right, left before he went through the intersection. That's how fast an accident can happen in the blink of an eye. And unfortunately, this was a preventable accident, and this guy, the driver, got charged in this incident. So, you know, people have to understand that even though the California State Vehicle Code gives ambulances and emergency vehicles the right of way when displaying red lights and siren, it still does not relieve the driver operator of due regard for his safety or the safety of others. And you can see clearly here, this guy violated everything that we just talked about. Didn't slow down, didn't clear the intersection. All right. Then his partner wasn't helping him at all. And they just lost focus of the whole situation. All right. Every ambulance service should have a policy on emergency response. This is only a sample policy. Okay. When you get to your ambulance company and you start to work, one of the things that they're going to do for you in your orientation is actually give you a copy of the policies and procedures manual, incorporate that into your in-service training, and then they're going to make you sign a document stating that you've read and understood all the policies and procedures. Okay, so notice some of the things that they talk about in here. Here are some recommendations to consider when you look at policies and procedures. You need to distinguish between the emergency and non-emergency response and what your company's policy is. En route to the scene, dispatch determines the emergency response, or en route to the hospital, the EMS provider in charge of patient care will determine emergency response based on the patient's conditions and medical needs. There is no such thing, okay, as an absolute right of way. During emergency response, use headlights and all emergency lights and siren as stipulated by your company policy or state law. All right, emergency vehicles shall not exceed the posted speed limits by more than 10 miles per hour. Every company and department has a policy on this. Okay, when approaching an intersection, the vehicle must be operated in such a manner as to permit the driver to make a safe and controlled stop if necessary. The emergency vehicle operator must account for all lanes of traffic prior to proceeding through the intersection and treat each line of traffic as a separate intersection. Now, when it's necessary to move left of center, the emergency vehicle operator must do so with extreme caution, which in that video, the guy did not, at a maximum of 20 miles per hour and come to a full and complete stop at the intersection. All right, the use of escorts or convoys is probably discouraged, and most states do not allow that by law. If necessary, a minimum of 300 to 400 feet should be provided under good road conditions and weather conditions between each emergency vehicle. Okay, the bottom line is you need to look at the standard operating procedures for the department or the ambulance company that you're working on and know the state law governing driving and the operation of an ambulance. That's what you're going to be held accountable for. On average, class, driving emergency with lights and sirens saves approximately only 40 seconds, believe it or not. Then you have to ask yourself, is it worth taking a life by acting recklessly? And what happens if you are involved in an accident? Okay, another unit will be needed to respond to the original call, and another, okay, will have to respond to your wreck. Driving above the speed limit is absolutely dangerous. Your ambulance, again, it's longer, it's wider, and it has a higher center of gravity, and it's easy to roll over. Okay, it will cause you to have a more difficult time maintaining control of your vehicle. Speed limits are based on road traffic and the quality and size of the road. Driving too fast for conditions will present, okay, with longer stopping distances. Balance the need, class, for safety and the need for speed in responding to life threats. Always follow your department's or your company's standard operating procedures. You need to constantly remind yourself and ask yourself this question. Is there actually an example where arriving at the emergency department less than a minute sooner would have made a difference for your patient? All right, these are all things that if you wind up going to court in a civil trial, things that the jury is going to be asked to decide. Okay, during the emergency response, you're going to have to communicate with your dispatch effectively. Communication should be in plain English, short and to the point. You need to key the microphone for 1 to 2 seconds before speaking so that you do not cut off the first part of your transmission, because most of the radios, if not all of them, operate off a repeater system, and it needs that 1 to 2 seconds, okay, to get to the repeater. So if you start talking, the very split second you push the microphone talk key button, they're going to miss the first part of your conversation. Now, if you have an emergency, such as being involved in an accident, you need to key the microphone and state, after you wait for 1 to 2 seconds, dispatch, then your number, emergency traffic, and then what you need to say. You need to stay composed as much as possible and use a monotone voice. Be sure to identify the call location and type. Be familiar with your agency's area and understand the local numbering system and landmarks within your agency and how the different blocks are numbered in your response area. Be alert for any streets with similar names. You know, like you may have a street called Mountainside Drive, and then Mountainside Place, and then Mountainside Road. Here in 29 Palms, we have a Mojave Road, a Mojave Avenue, and a Mojave Place. This is where you really, really, really have to pay attention to detail and focus in on your listening skills. Okay, again, be familiar with your agency's area and understand the local numbering systems and landmarks. Be alert for any streets with similar names. Be alert, okay, because sometimes you have West Main Street and East Main Street. So if you think that the dispatch is at 100 West Main Street and it's at 100 East Main Street, you're lost. All right, it is best to keep your communications between the dispatch and the other crew members in the front seat. All right, if it's not possible, hold communications until you're out of the high-risk locations. And a high-risk location means, you know, traveling through an intersection against a red light. So always select the best route. You need to consider unique situations posed by the time of day, day of week, weather, location, and construction. It's always best to know the route prior to leaving your station. All right, check the map quickly. You should be out driving around if you're new and learning your area. All right, you should not have to depend on programming the GPS device before you start responding. You got to know the area well enough and begin heading in the direction of your call while your partner is programming the GPS device en route. Make sure the route device recommends is not compromised by construction, heavy traffic, okay, or some other unforeseen local complication. You also have to make sure the route the device recommends is the correct location. Example, 43rd Street and 3rd Street in Brooklyn is a great distance from 43rd Street and 3rd Avenue in Manhattan. Okay, and I just gave you an example up here where I work. We have Mojave Road, Mojave Avenue, and Mojave Drive. All three different streets and all about 4 or 5 miles apart from each other. Keep your eyes on the road and not on your GPS device. If you get lost, you should pull over and call the dispatcher for better directions. And then if that ever happens, you'll be called into your supervisor's office when you get back from the call. Okay, lights and sirens class are used to alert and inform traffic and pedestrians of an approaching emergency vehicle in order to aid, okay, in clearing a safe path for you to proceed. Even with emergency warning devices activated, it is never permitted to drive around railroad crossing arms, okay, that are down, or around a stopped school bus with flashing warning lights. And you should be sure all intersection lanes are clear before proceeding through the intersections. The right-of-way allowed in many states is not a guarantee and assumes others see and hear you. Your state and local laws, as well as your agency's standard operating procedures, will determine the types of devices that you will use during an emergency call. All right, the bottom line is this: always use caution when driving through active school zones. You never know when car doors will be open, when children will run out between parked cars, or run out into the street chasing a ball. You have to be cognizant all the time. Remember the 5 keys of defensive driving: aim high in steering, get the big picture, keep your eyes moving, make sure they see you, and leave yourself an out. The minute you violate one of those 5 keys of defensive driving is when you're setting yourself up for an accident. And remember, the key to defensive driving is always anticipation. Lights are critical for an emergency response. Types include on and off blinking red lights, light bars, strobe lights, and don't use the strobe lights in fog conditions. Most ambulances class have a combination of these types. Now, the colors of the lights are often state specific: red, white, blue, yellow. You have to understand what are the lights allowed in your state, because once you take out that ambulance and you're operating it, you're the one that's responsible for it. Okay, emergency lights class are used to alert others of your presence. You should always use lights and sirens when responding to an emergency. Never just respond with red lights only or with siren only. In this state, California, 21055 of the vehicle code states, in order to be exempt from certain traffic laws, you must be operating at code 3. Code 3 response is defined as the emergency lights activated and the siren activated, both together. Emergency lights are also used to request to have the right of way, okay, or to clear a path. It is important to understand, class, that if you are not given the right of way, then you got to wait. Okay, you cannot use lights and sirens to bully people out of your way or pull up behind somebody at an intersection and lay on the air horn and then force them out in the intersection and they get T-boned. You can't do that. On bright, sunny days or when a vehicle has dark tinted windows, most drivers will not see your lights right away. Okay, and I know that I've been in a car with tinted windows and I can't even see the lights activated on an emergency vehicle coming up behind me. What I can see though are the headlights that are wigwagging, going on and off. That catches my eyes way before the red lights do. Now, there are several types of sirens. All must meet, okay, the Department of Transportation specs, okay, of 90 to 120 decibels, as well as any local municipal, county, or state laws. There are several types of siren sounds, and let me go over them with you. The most common one is called the wail, which is a continuous repeating tone from high to low frequency, commonly used on long stretches of road or going down a street. Arguably, okay, the best siren tone to reach most motorists is the wail. Remember that for your test. Then we have the federal Q. This is an electronic or mechanical wail siren. Few ambulances have them, mostly a fire apparatus siren, but you got to be careful to modulate the tone. This is a siren where you step on the button, okay, and then it goes all the way up, but you got to release the button and let the sound go all the way back down. Then we have what we call the yelp, and the yelp is short burst of modulated sound. This siren tone is very good for clearing intersections and moving heavy traffic. Then we have the high-low frequency. This is a common siren sound used in Europe. It's not recognized in the United States. Some states, class, have outlawed the use of this type of siren. California is one of those states. The high-low siren is used for civil notification to large populations and not on ambulances. Then we have what we call the phaser. And this is a ray gun sound effect that is totally useless as a siren. The only people who hear this siren well are the crew in the cab. It's limited use in close proximity of vehicles for short periods. It does not transmit the sound way out in front of your vehicle. Next is we have the low frequency or the rumble. And this can shake solid material so motorists can feel the sound wave. It's used in conjunction with the wail or the yelp. Studies are still being done for its effectiveness, but an anecdotal evidence suggests that it is effective in dense urban settings. Then we have the air horn, which is found on fire apparatus and on some ambulances. Okay, it's used in short intermittent bursts. It is a very effective tool to identify the specific direction of where the ambulance is coming from. It can be a hindrance, though, to motorists if it's used ineffectively. Typically, class, the yelp, the high-low, and phaser are used to change the pattern to gain the attention of other motorists. The wail is the most common for long distances. Sirens, class, tend to become omnidirectional, in other words, projecting in all directions when they bounce off of buildings. Sirens should never be used to push people out of the way. This can lead to another accident, and you could be charged with a preventable accident. Remember, your very first thing is to first do no harm. Okay, sirens should be continuous during the response and not used intermittently. Remember, California state law says if you are responding to an emergency, code 3, that includes red lights and siren. Most ambulance drivers who get into an accident only responding with their red lights are held not only criminally responsible, but civilly responsible as well. The reason you are using them is to signal the other vehicles to clear your path, not to startle the drivers. Okay, you are more likely to be involved in a collision with lights and siren activated due to a stress and startle reaction by other drivers. This is why you've got to really pay attention. Okay, they panic and make poor decisions. They'll stop and slam on the brakes right in front of you. Or they'll make a beeline from the number 1 lane across all 4 lanes to the right shoulder. The older the driver, the more time they're going to need to make appropriate decisions about where to move their vehicle safely. Air horns, class, okay, tend to become unidirectional and help to pinpoint the location of the emergency vehicle. That's why you'll hear most ambulances and fire apparatus use the air horns as they approach an intersection in conjunction with the siren and the red lights. Okay. You need to understand, class, that at faster speeds, okay, the siren projects a shorter distance from the vehicle. Sirens signal to other drivers that an emergency vehicle is approaching. Please understand that at faster speeds, the siren projects a shorter distance from the vehicle. This means, okay, the drivers in front of you on a highway may not hear you until you are within just a few feet of the rear bumper. Most drivers with windows up and the radio on will not hear the sirens. Sirens and lights, by law in this state, must be used together. Consider what would happen if you're using lights without sirens and you're involved in an accident. I want to repeat this again. You will be held civilly and criminally liable. Do not let, this is mostly common with private ambulance companies. Do not let your supervisor tell you, I don't know, we just use red lights. Because at the end of the day, the driver is the one that gets charged with the ticket and charged with the accident, not the supervisor. Okay, one of the first questions an attorney will ask you will be whether you used all your safety devices on your ambulance at the time you became involved in the accident. Okay, it's just like, how are you going to be able to defend your actions if the answer to that question is no? Regardless of which sound or audible warning device is used, it is important to know the limits of such devices. Do not rely on them solely because the public often will not hear you. The glass composite and sound penetration is something you have to be cognizant of. Sound penetrates glass at different frequencies depending on the shape and design of the windshield. Okay, This is why you have to keep the siren on. Most sirens are effective only 230 feet ahead of your ambulance if you're traveling at the speed limit. The faster your ambulance is traveling, remember, the less time motorists and pedestrians have to hear and respond to your warning. If the ambulance is traveling above 40 miles per hour, this is a test question, that last bullet. You might want to highlight it and remember it. If your ambulance is traveling 40 miles per hour, there may not be any time to hear and respond properly. Most people want to do the right thing and yield to you if they are given proper reaction time to do so. Just remember, the faster your ambulance is traveling, the shorter the distance, okay, that the siren sound wave is being projected. And once you exceed 40 miles per hour, that distance shortens tremendously every increase in speed. Every 5 mile per hour increase in speed, the sound wave of that ambulance shortens. I read one study where if you're traveling 60 miles per hour, the sound wave of the siren on an ambulance can only be heard 12 feet in front of the ambulance. All right, let's, I'm going to play this video. All right, this video is going to show that other the drivers are not always attentive to the presence of an ambulance. So I'm going to ask some questions, and I'll just go over them right now so you can be considering them. Okay, so as we watch this video, I want you to ask yourself this question. What is the perception of the newscaster as you listen to this video? Okay, I want you to consider that as you listen to this newscaster, that he uses phrases such as barreling down the road. Okay, what did the emergency vehicle operator's partner say just prior to this crash? All right, so I'm going to ask you that question. What did the ambulance driver's partner say just before the crash? Then you need to ask yourself, who was at fault? Okay, and what was the outcome? The next question you need to consider is this as you watch the video. What is the community's perception of this collision? The next question you need to consider is what is the agency's perception of this collision? And then finally, what is your perception based on this video? All right, so here we go.
It seems like most vehicles realize that this ambulance is barreling down Palafox Street. Cars are pulling over and the sirens are blaring, but the driver of one car on Johnson Avenue didn't see it. In a matter of seconds, the crew is first on the scene of their own emergency. The ambulance is a little banged up, but the gold car is in worse shape.
Thankfully, the accidents of this type don't happen that often.
Public Safety Director Janice Kilgore says the crew suffered minor injuries. In fact, she says they looked past their own health and went right into emergency mode.
They got out and obviously tried to work with her until some other help got there.
The driver of the car was taken to the hospital and is recovering from minor injuries, but she was cited for not yielding to the emergency vehicle. Kilgore says you should always be on the lookout for first responders.
Just be aware of your surroundings. With your air conditioner and radio going, sometimes it's hard to hear them until they're right up on top of you.
You can still see a lot of the debris from it.
Russ Villarreal spends a lot of time at the market that's on the corner of Palafox and Johnson. He says people speed through the intersection all of the time.
I've seen it probably 10, 15 times right here in the last 5 years.
He hopes drivers in the area learn to be more cautious.
When you hear a siren, or just be alert about your situation and your surroundings. And if you hear a siren, pull over.
Words of wisdom that will hopefully prevent scenes like this.
All right, I mean, you could sit here and look at the 5 keys of defensive driving and see that this guy, the driver, violated multiple keys. And it doesn't even appear that he slowed down to clear the intersection. It doesn't appear that he was keeping his eyes moving. It didn't appear that that he got the big picture. All right. I mean, there was a bunch of mistakes that led up to this accident. You know, wouldn't you think that if you were the partner and you saw that it was a red light, that you'd start telling him, hey, don't forget the red light, we need to slow down. But the partner said it right here within 1 or 2 seconds before the impact. And did you notice the way the press perceived this and then said barreling down the roadway? So what do you think the public's perception is now of this ambulance company or this department? That's what I mean. I mean, the public, it only takes one accident to diminish the reputation of your fire department or your ambulance company. And again, this accident was preventable. My notes here say that the driver was charged with excessive speed for roadway conditions and failure to yield the right of way. So again, just because we're running with red lights and siren does not mean that you have the absolute right of way. The response mode class to the hospital should be based on patient condition. Non-critical or non-urgent patients comprise 80% of your EMS assignments. Okay, these patients will be triaged to wait in the emergency department, so a lights and siren ride puts everybody in danger unnecessarily. For those critical patients where time is important, save time by calling ahead. All right, for those critical patients where time is important, I want to repeat this because this is a test question. Okay, calling ahead and transporting to the appropriate facility is highly recommended. Always travel at a speed that will be safe for the patient and the crew working on the patient in the back of the ambulance. Remember, the impact of driving at a faster speed has on the crew and equipment. Remember the videos we saw the last couple of class meetings. The effects of a vehicle's dynamics are more magnified in the back of the ambulance than in the driver's seat. A small change in direction can throw the crew around in the back, especially if they're in the process of doing CPR or some other kind of emergency action to keep the patient alive until they get to the hospital. Now, when using the yelp or phaser to clear traffic, you should engage the siren approximately 150 to 200 feet before the intersection. That's another test question. Okay, these sounds may be more effective when used in conjunction with the wail. No matter which siren that you use, make sure to vary the sound when approaching and moving through an intersection. Now, vehicle placement on the roadway conveys your intentions to other motorists. When traveling on a multi-lane or bi-directional, which means a two-way roadway, you need to position your vehicle as close to the center line as possible without crossing it. When traveling on a multi-lane, unidirectional, or one-way road, it is best to be in the middle lane or the center of the roadway. When traffic is extremely congested, driving down the center gives traffic options to clear a path for you. Okay, staying close to the center line avoids hazards such as double parked cars, all right, pedestrians stepping off curbs, people getting in or out of parked cars, or traffic, okay, moving to the right to yield the right of way to you. Staying in the center of the road on a one-way street allows traffic to pull either to the right or left to clear a pathway for you. That's what we mean by roadway command. I want to explain to you, class, that on a multi-directional road, the emergency vehicle operator should stay near the center lane without crossing it to allow traffic to move safely out of the way. You see how this ambulance is right here? This is what we're talking about. This is a multi-directional road. Multiple lanes going in each direction. This is a unidirectional road. Okay, on a unidirectional road, the emergency vehicle operator can travel in the center of the road to allow traffic to move in either direction to clear a path for the ambulance. This is a one-way street. Now, if it is necessary for you to cross the double yellow line into the oncoming lane of traffic, you need to follow your standard operating procedures and state law. Slow down to no more than 20 miles per hour and use your turn signals. Use lights and sirens as required by law. When in oncoming traffic, stay as close to the double yellow line as possible. This will take the guessing out of where the other drivers should move. In most states, okay, they are told to move to the right. So this should be a more natural reaction for them. Make sure the oncoming traffic is yielding and moving to their right. Okay, leaving the center lane for you to proceed. Okay, always watch for motorists in the left turning lane, which would be on your right side, who may attempt to turn left into your path. Now, as soon as possible, get back across the center line. Remember, class, okay, that traffic law exemptions are permitted only for the time that they are necessary and when allowed by state law and company SOP and while driving code 3, meaning red lights and siren together. Take a look at this picture. The ambulance is traveling left of center and has the red light. Traffic approaching from its left or the top right has the green light and is traveling at 30 miles per hour or 44 feet per second. The truck may see and stop for the ambulance, but the blue car will not. By the time both drivers recognize each other, they will need an additional 70 feet of reaction distance to begin avoiding each other and an additional 42.5 feet, okay, of braking distance. Now, if the ambulance does not slow drastically or stop prior to entering the intersection, this collision will most likely be unavoidable. Does everybody get what I just said? You see the blind spot in that blue car on the cross traffic because of the truck? Also the blind spot for the ambulance driver. And again, anticipation is the key to defensive driving. All right, look at the hazard. They look at the car right next to the ambulance, the blue car next to the ambulance. Okay, the ambulance is coming up in their blind spot. Now, when responding with other emergency vehicles, be extremely cautious of the high frequency of emergency vehicle traffic. Okay, it could include an MCI, which is a mass casualty incident, structure fire, hazmat incident, or technical rescue, or, okay, responding with other agencies such as law enforcement. You should have your window slightly cracked to hear other responders' sirens as well. Be careful in intersections because other vehicles may be responding from other locations to the same incident as you are. Okay, pay attention to special directions from command regarding where to park your vehicle once you get on scene. Larger incidents may involve what we call a staging area or a staging sector. Pre-planned routes may have to be adapted, okay? And it's important that the driver stay focused on driving and the passenger focus on receiving new information, responding to radio traffic, and navigating the ambulance while the driver's work is actually using the keys of defensive driving. There's a lot going on. Okay, these new instructions could be life-saving, especially in a hazardous material situation where chemicals may be airborne and moving in one direction due to the weather. This is why we preach all the time, and you're going to hear the fire departments and you're going to hear ambulance companies. Okay, make sure you come to work well rested. Do not be on energy drinks. Do not be on medication. As a matter of fact, if some of you go to work for either care ambulance or AMR, you know, they're going to be discussing accidents where their people did not get their rest or they were on some kind of medication and it slowed their reaction time down. It's just not worth it. All right, let's take a look at this picture right here. Okay, when responding, there often are multiple emergency responders arriving from different locations that could converge in an intersection. All right, the emergency vehicle operator must always be cautious when you enter an intersection. Now, this video I'm going to play will show a collision between two fire department pumpers. You have to ask yourself, why did this happen? Who is responsible? These are questions that will be asked during the investigation phase and also if there's any litigation. Maintaining situational awareness is one of the most important things you'll ever do, from listening to the dispatch information to keeping your eyes and ears open and staying alert. Now, I'm going to ask you I need you to ask yourself some questions. What are some of the issues that may have factored into this crash that we're going to see? All right, let me play it. There is no sound on this, by the way, on this video clip. Let's take a look at it again. All right, what do you think are some contributing factors here? Which engine was at fault?
The one coming straight ahead. It looks like he had a red light and he didn't slow.
Correct.
You can tell he kind of tried to hit the brakes as he's passing through, but I mean, it's kind of pointless when you're driving a big rig like that.
Yeah, you see how easy these rigs tip over? Remember, these are carrying anywhere from 500 to 1,000 gallons of water as well. All right. Fatigue was a factor in this collision after reading the accident report. Distraction. They were talking in the cab. Okay, the driver was talking in the cab, asking the captain where he wants the vehicle parked and stuff. And the other thing that played a major part in this was ego. I'm driving the big bad fire truck. People will get out of my way. The other thing is they weren't listening to radio traffic. The other thing is the guy never even slowed down. Would you believe this was a preventable accident for both drivers? Both drivers. Because remember, way back in our second class meeting, I talked about even if you have the green light, okay, you should check left, right, left before going through the intersection. Especially if you're responding to a multi-agency call or a multi-casualty incident. And this is exactly why. Now you've got two vehicles out of service. Both of them pumpers, and both of them look like they were aerial apparatus as well. Intersections, understand, are extremely dangerous locations where the most severe emergency vehicle collisions occur. First, you need to check traffic to the left. This traffic is closer and presents the most immediate threat. Be especially careful when you approach blind intersections. Your vision of oncoming traffic may be obstructed. Vehicle warning lights on front corners of fenders may provide an early warning to crossing traffic. All right, let's take a look at this diagram. One of the most dangerous maneuvers an emergency vehicle operator performs is crossing an intersection against a red light. Intersection collisions frequently cause more damage, injuries, and fatalities than any other collision. There's even a greater chance of incident, okay, if the light is a fresh light due to other motorists hurrying to jump the light, if freshly green or not stopping in time, if it's freshly a red light. The safest way to cross an intersection against the light is as follows. When approaching this intersection, change the siren pattern from wail to yelp and use a short burst on the air horn before approaching the intersection. Continuously scan the intersection in all directions and monitor radio traffic for other assignment locations in case any other emergency vehicles are approaching from the same direction. Proceed slowly through the intersection. If there is any other traffic waiting at the light, stop parallel to the rear bumper of the first vehicle in the left lane before proceeding through it. This is step one. Then you will come to a complete stop at the limit line. You'll wait for the drivers to identify you, making eye contact with the drivers if possible. Watch the vehicle wheel and driver head movement to confirm that drivers are slowing and stopping, and give your siren time to travel to other motorists and pedestrians near the intersection. This is step two. Okay, it is very important for the emergency vehicle operator, okay, to wait until drivers identify the emergency vehicle. Every accident we've seen in this lecture today, they did not wait, okay, for the traffic in the intersection to identify the emergency vehicle. They just proceeded right on through. Next, you'll pull up to the entrance of the intersection and wait for traffic to yield. This is step three. Then you will continue with the siren and yelp and with short bursts of the air horn. As you pull up to the line, that denotes that the next lane of traffic. Do not pass this line, class, until you ensure that the drivers in the lane identify you and yield the right of way. This is step four. Then for step five, you'll clear each lane of traffic in this manner until you clear the intersection. Remember, as you approach the center of the intersection, pay attention to traffic coming from your right that may not be able to see you. Do not stop scanning the intersection until you are completely through the intersection and traveling in your designated travel lane. If you're in doubt, stop. Don't assume the other driver is stopping just because they see you. They may think that they have enough time to beat you through the intersection. I've seen that numerous times. The bottom line, class, if you think the intersection is clear, then we need to check it again. All right, let's take a look at this picture. When approaching an intersection, you need to adjust your speed and slow down. Other vehicles traveling at the same speed as you may get caught in your mirror and A-pillar. Okay, the A-pillar on a vehicle, for those of you that haven't been through the fire academy, is the one that's you see in front of you right there. Each pillar in auto extrication is A-pillar, and then the B-pillar, is between the front door and the rear door, and then the C pillar would be the one that supports the back window. This is the A pillar. Okay, in this set of slides, the vehicles are traveling at the same speed, which is 40 miles per hour, or 58.6 feet per minute, or per second, I should say. Both drivers have a reaction time of 1.6 seconds, or 93.7 feet of reaction distance before their foot will step on the brake. The outline of the vehicle here demonstrates its position in the emergency vehicle operator's blind spot. You see how the mirror creates the blind spot? By varying your speed class, you allow the other vehicle to move out of the blind spot. Remember, you don't hit things you see. You hit things you don't see. The car is barely visible in this photo. That looks like the gray car right there, barely visible to the driver. I can't wait till we get back to doing the driving in this class, because you're going to see that there are a ton of blind spots in an ambulance. By varying your speed, you allow the other vehicle to move out of the blind spot. Remember, class, again, you don't hit things you see. You hit things you don't see. And again, this car here is barely visible. At this point, the emergency vehicle operator now identifies the car headed into the ambulance path. The ambulance now needs 93 feet of reaction distance and 75 feet of braking distance for a total stopping distance of 169 feet. There is less than 20 feet in front of the ambulance to stop. Now, with the brakes applied, the ambulance broadsides the vehicle, sending the vehicle into a utility pole on the opposite corner, killing the passenger, okay, and critically injuring the driver. So let's ask these questions. Who had the right-of-way in this situation? Well, the right-of-way class depends on traffic control device. If the red lights and siren are being used, you still should come to a complete stop while requesting the right-of-way through this intersection. The next question I would ask is, what would you do if this vehicle came out of nowhere? All right, this is why you got to use the 5 keys of defensive driving. Okay, I would attempt to stop the vehicle. This is why it's so important to decrease your speed and cover the brake with your foot when going through an intersection. Remember, the lower the speed on impact, the lesser the severity of the crash. So then I have to ask this question, looking at this slide. Okay, who will most likely sustain, okay, significant injuries if there is a collision? The answer to that would be the person in the Corvette, okay, and anyone who is in the back of the ambulance are the most likely to get injured. So these last 5 slides demonstrate to you, okay, of the blind spots just in the ambulance created by the A post and the mirror, and how fast an accident can happen. All right, let's take a look at this slide. In this slide, the ambulance, which is the yellow, which is depicted there in the yellow oval, okay, is beginning to cross left of center. Okay, so where is the first stop? All right, keep looking at this as I answer these questions. Okay, the first stop that this ambulance driver should make should be at the rear bumper of the first vehicle in the left lane. That is to the right of the driver's, okay, to the driver's right of the ambulance, that blue car. Why is that? Because if you remember, we just talked about this, to allow the driver to see the emergency vehicle in the mirror and to allow the siren sound to penetrate deeper into that intersection. So then we need to ask ourselves, if you're driving the ambulance, okay, where's each stop sequentially? Okay, the first stop is at the crosswalk. The second stop is at the curb. And the third stop is just before crossing a lane marking. The reason for that is to safely allow traffic to recognize, process, and react to lights. Okay, so what is the best siren tone to clear this intersection? As you look at this, it would be the yelp. Excuse me, class. Okay, for the test. Okay, the best sound of the siren to clear an intersection is the yelp. In what direction does a siren sound project? Answer. Okay, omnidirectional. Okay, straight out in front, multi-directions. What other types of warning devices should be used in addition to the siren wail and the siren yelp? Answer should be the air horn. Air horn. The next answer, or the next question, in what direction does an air horn sound project? Answer, unidirectional. In other words, straight out in front. Omnidirectional is the siren sound. Okay, that means it projects all around the ambulance. The air horn is unidirectional, which means it projects straight ahead. Did everybody get those things to study? Okay, what siren tone should be used to clear an intersection? The yelp. In what direction does a siren sound project? Omnidirectional, in all directions. What other types of warning devices should be used to help clear an intersection besides the siren? The air horn. And then, in what direction does an air horn sound project? The answer is unidirectionally, meaning straight ahead. Yeah, Herman? Okay, thumbs up. All right. All right, let's take a look at this driving situation. Ask yourself this question as you look here. Okay, what is the chief hazard that the ambulance may encounter here? Alma, take a look at this and see if you can answer. Study the picture for a minute. Here's the question. What is the chief hazard that the ambulance may encounter here? The ambulance is across the street. You see it approaching?
Yeah.
What is the chief hazard here? You're the driver. What are you cognizant of right now?
I want to say the small blind spot from that white car.
Yeah, absolutely. Alma, you're spot on. Okay, the chief hazard here is a vehicle making a right turn. That white vehicle, remember the bus is blocking that vehicle's view. So you have to be cognizant of a vehicle, okay, that's making the right turn at that intersection. And this is where anticipation comes in. Okay, so I want to discuss ways to mitigate those hazards before you encounter them. Okay, you need to stop, proceed slowly, change siren tones frequently. When entering a section that has a blind spot, learn to angle the vehicle to cut the pie, so to speak, and get the front intersection marker out into the intersection before the rest of the vehicle. What that means is the lights on the fenders. Okay, if you look at how emergency vehicles are equipped with, they've got lights in the grill, lights overhead, lights in the box, and lights on the right and front left fenders and on the left and right rear fenders. All right, let's take a look at this. Now from this angle, this is a different angle. Okay, we can see that the green car is in the blind spot. The emergency vehicle operator and this driver don't see or hear each other. The green car, okay, has the green light and clear intersection. The driver of the green car might assume in this situation that the truck to the left is making a left turn. Between the engine noise of the truck and any other noise within the car, such as the radio, the air conditioner, the heater, cell phone, etc., this driver will not be aware of the emergency vehicle until it's in its path. Okay, some motorists think the vehicle has broken down, not realizing they are stopped for an emergency vehicle and speed to go around them so they don't miss the light, colliding with the ambulance. Okay, if you are the emergency vehicle operator in this situation, okay, what concerns might you have? Stop and think about it for a minute. Okay, so some of the concerns, I'm going to look at this intersection and I'm going to tell you what some of my concerns are. Too cluttered, traffic's already in the intersection, opposing a red light is always dangerous, and I must be alert to pedestrians who may run out in front of my vehicle. Okay, now, which vehicle has the right of way in this situation? The correct answer would be, all right, all vehicles that have a green light have the immediate right of way. Now, the ambulance, when you look at this, okay, is requesting the right of way and can take it only, okay, if all other motorists allow the ambulance to have the right of way. Okay, so what issues do high-profile vehicles present? A high-profile vehicle is like the bus or like that delivery truck that says FAAC on it. Those are high-profile vehicles. So is a motorhome, and also so is a semi-truck. Okay, so these vehicles, high-profile vehicles, create a sound and sight barrier. Both the ambulance and the vehicles cannot see or hear each other effectively. So you have to be aware of that. Okay, are drivers to your left able to see you with the bus next to you? And can the truck that is in the intersection mask a smaller vehicle that is beside it? Okay, as I look at this picture, I say yes, because most buses have windows that are over 5 feet high. The only person seeing your lights and sign are the passengers on the bus. All right, now since this is in a downtown area, how are sirens perceived in a city with a tall building? This is something else you have to consider. The sirens bounce off the buildings and echo, making it difficult to know where the emergency vehicle is coming from. All right, so if you're working downtown LA, downtown San Diego, downtown Riverside, someplace where they have multi-story buildings, you're going to have to be cognizant of this. In this picture here, if the box truck stops suddenly for you, what can happen with the 18-wheeler approaching behind it? Okay, due to its weight, remember 18-wheelers can have up to 80,000 pounds. Okay, so due to the weight, the 18-wheeler may not have enough stopping distance and can slam into the box truck, causing what we call a wake effect. Okay, accident, which means pushing the box truck into the ambulance path. I mean, I wouldn't even dare go through this intersection, okay, until I saw everybody stopped and I saw everybody's eyes focused on me. This here, downtown, creates a very bad situation and hazardous situation for any emergency vehicle. All right, so let's communicate here. I mean, let's summarize right here. So we have to understand that we talked about how important it was to communicate with dispatch. We talked about how important it was to use the appropriate route selection and warning devices. We talked about which warning devices are best to clear an intersection. We talked about how to maintain roadway command, including while you're clearing an intersection. And we also talked about how important it was that your number one concern is the safety of you, your passenger, your patient, and the motoring public, and not every response, okay, from the scene to the hospital is going to require red lights and siren. Are there any questions? I think the diagrams that or the pictorials that we put up here kind of help you visualize what we're talking about. So Skylar, does that help you at all? The pictorials, the diagrams?
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, Jeremiah, how about you?
Yeah, it helped me like really visualize, you know, what you were talking about, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of these things where this is why that you'll be out in the field maybe 60 to 90 days in training, because just when you think it's very hard to predict human behavior, and you know, it's like you always have to keep your head on a swivel, always got to get the big picture, always got to anticipate the other driver's responses. So with this, let's come back at 9:35. Okay, 9:35, and we'll get into lesson number 8. All right, we'll see you back then, class. Okay, I'm back. I think everybody can wake up from their little nap. And we'll get started here in another minute. Okay, let me pull up our next lecture, which is chapter 8, or lesson 8 on crash prevention. All right, in this lesson class, we are going to discuss factors that contribute to crashes involving ambulances, talk a little bit about defensive driving techniques and safe driving, the proper response to dangerous conditions, and resources for crash reports and investigations, and then some safety technology and vehicle design in modern ambulances that help reduce ambulance crashes. And just like I've said before, the exam questions on the certification exam are mapped to these learning objectives. So the first one, by the time you and I get done with this chapter, you should be able to discuss factors that contribute to ambulance crashes, discuss the importance of employing defensive driving techniques and having a safe driving attitude. You should be able to describe how to respond to dangerous driving conditions such as skidding, running off the road, and a tire failure. And you should be able to outline considerations for how to position a vehicle in a safe location. You should also be able to list helpful resources for reviewing crash investigation reports. You should be able to identify safety technology and vehicle design elements that can help reduce the likelihood of a crash, and discuss what to do when a collision occurs. All right, as you look at this picture, all right, let me explain this scenario to you. Okay, at the emergency department, Mike noticed that there were several other units present and that he would have to fit the vehicle into a tight space between two other ambulances. He did not want to bother his partner, Shelley, to get out of the vehicle to assist or to look out the rear window. So he began to back the vehicle into the space to the right. Mike knew this was the worst angle because he was reversing, okay, into his blind side. In other words, he was doing a blind side back. Shelley had been standing in the patient compartment and was placing equipment in the overhead compartment. Upon the impact, Shelley fell and hit her head against the compartment door, causing a small laceration to her forehead and a hematoma. A few butterfly bandages were required to close her wound, and Mike had to write a huge incident report. The ambulance service investigated the incident and made several changes as a result. First, okay, the service added language to their standard operating procedures, requiring partners to serve as spotters when reversing the vehicle, if doing so would not compromise patient care. They also decided to include backup cameras on the units, as well as a right side camera to help eliminate any blind spots while backing. And finally, the ambulance company also revised its guidelines to include restraint systems for the attendant providing care. All right, so you have to ask yourself this, okay? You should always use a spotter when possible, okay? The only time you should not use a spotter, okay, is when it's going to jeopardize patient care. And you just won't understand how many blind spots are on an ambulance until you actually are seated in the driver. And this is why I like our ambulance driving course, because the first couple of times you get behind the wheel and you drive through the course, you're running over cones, you didn't see this, you didn't see that. And by the time you get through the driving course on the third day, it's like, wow, you know, your driving skills improved drastically, just changing some of your behavior. Okay, so do cameras eliminate? Here's another question you're going to have to answer. If your ambulance is equipped with cameras, okay, do they eliminate all blind spots? The answer to that question is no, they do not. You still need to use a spotter. Does a spotter need to be used if cameras are in place? I just answered that question. Absolutely. Absolutely. A camera is an aid. Okay, a spotter can serve as a physical deterrent to pedestrians who might try to cross behind your ambulance while you're backing. And finally, what other technologies could be used to avoid collisions? All right, you can have the beeping sound, you know, when you back up and you hear the loud beep, 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 like you hear on the fire trucks. Right now, most fire departments require 2 spotters, one at the left rear so they can watch the rear of the vehicle and the left side of the vehicle. And then they have a spotter that stands about 25 feet out from the right corner. And that spotter looks at the right side of the vehicle plus the front of the vehicle. Both spotters can view the driver. The left rear spotter can see the driver in the mirror, and the right front spotter can see the driver through the windshield. If you are the driver, the general rule of thumb is you stop backing if you cannot visualize your spotters. There was an incident several years ago when a Los Angeles City fire apparatus driver was backing the ambulance, lost sight of the female spotter, and then backed over her and killed her. All right, so as a result now in the driver operator course I teach for the firefighters, we preach and we teach. Okay, when you lose sight of your spotter, you stop immediately until the spotter gets back in your view. Now, crashes are all too common. All right, there are 10 in the US alone. Okay, there are 10,000 a year. The National Highway Transportation Safety Administration, okay, the Center for Statistics and Analysis found that from 1988 to 1997, the number of EMS deaths were 12.7 per 100,000 EMS workers, a number more than twice the average occupational fatality rate. From 1991, okay, to the year 2000, roughly 300 fatal crashes occurred. Okay, so what are some common contributing factors? All right, so let's take a look. During all of the accident investigations, okay, they try to come up with some contributing factors so we can add this to our training curriculum. I'm going to list them up on the screen here. You might want to write these down because there's like 5 test questions that come out of these contributing factors. So let's take a look at them. Okay. Driver error. Okay. Operator fatigue and distraction. Operating while under the influence of either alcohol, drugs, or prescribed drugs. Poor driver eyesight. Inadequate training. Lack of experience. Lack of knowledge of specific traffic laws pertaining to emergency vehicle operations. Inadequate policies and procedures that the department has for emergency vehicle operations. Inadequate vehicle maintenance. In other words, there was no vehicle maintenance program. The driver operator failed to do a pre-trip inspection before he took the ambulance out. A lack of vehicle performance or poor vehicle design. And finally, the lack of proper safety restraints. A preventable collision, class. This is a test question. A preventable collision is one in which the driver failed to do everything reasonable to prevent its occurrence. Every collision is preventable, but not all are avoidable. Collisions that can typically be prevented include parking collisions, intersection collisions, backing collisions, rear-end crashes, pedestrian collisions, mechanical failure, adverse weather collisions, traffic lane encroachment collisions, and collisions with fixed objects. You need to take reasonable preventable actions. The next slide is also a test question. Okay, the 3 E's of crash prevention. The first one is education. Education is the most important E of them all. When drivers understand the reasons and ramifications for their behavior, they tend to make adjustments in driving. Remember, class, the emergency vehicle operator is the #1 safety device on your ambulance. That is also a test question. The number one emergency vehicle operator, okay, is the #1 safety device. You, the driver, is the #1 safety device on the ambulance. The second E is engineering. The industry tries to solve behavior issues with technological solutions. Okay, do a review of recent car commercials on YouTube, okay, when we get done. Why? Do they have forward collision warnings? Should the driver be paying attention? I know on my brand new VW, it has a forward vehicle collision. And if I get within a few feet of a fixed object or a vehicle in front of me, the brakes automatically come on my car. Okay, that is an example of an engineering device. All right, the third E is enforcement. This is the least of them all. This should be the last resort. Using a stick instead of a carrot only works for a short time. Disciplining for bad performance rather than educating to eradicate bad performance only drives down morale on a fire department or an ambulance company. The perception of there is never a cop around when you want one and always a cop when you don't only leads to discontent. All right, what you should have got out of this slide is the most important E is education. The #1 safety mechanism on the ambulance is you, the driver. All right, and the least important E in crash prevention is enforcement. We would rather educate to prevent the bad behavior than discipline for the bad behavior. Be alert, class, to local laws and regulations that govern emergency vehicle operation. Do you know what your standard operating procedure, okay, is? That's what you got to ask yourself after you get off training. You need to thoroughly go through that standard operating procedure. Stay alert and anticipate other drivers' actions by aiming high and steering. And that means looking down the road in front of you at least 12 to 15 seconds. That is approximately a half mile on a highway and 3 city blocks in the city. Maintain the proper following distance and special distance around your vehicle. A driver of any vehicle has 100% control of the front end space. Okay, so then why does rear end collisions, why are they the leading collision on the road today and yet are the most preventable collision on the road today? No one, class, that operates an emergency vehicle should be involved in a rear end collision. Always make sure you leave yourself an out and always have an escape route. Are you aware that, okay, let me back up. Are you aware what is to the right or left of you? You should be by getting the big picture and keeping your eyes moving. Have you been checking your mirrors every 6 to 8 seconds? Okay, make sure the other drivers can see you. Keep your headlights on and avoid other vehicles' blind spots. Okay, where do you want to be in relation to other vehicles around you? Never allow yourself to get boxed in. Always leave yourself an out. Travel at a speed that is safe for the current driving conditions. If you want to save time, drive at a safe speed along the most direct route and call ahead on the radio so the emergency room is prepared for your arrival. Avoid multitasking whenever possible while driving your ambulance. The vehicle operator should focus on driving the vehicle. Let the EMS provider, who is not driving, deal with the radio and GPS. Let's face facts here, class. There will be times that the emergency vehicle operator will have to perform these duties while driving. Single person responder cars are becoming more of the norm, believe it or not, in rural communities. Tasks should be done before you start to drive. Mobile data terminals, also known as MDTs, okay, should be used after you pull over or at least at a red light while standing still. Radio should be used only in straight driving conditions with little traffic and never when entering an intersection or a curve. Inclement weather and hazardous driving conditions, i.e. loose gravel, leaves in the road, sand, are difficult to avoid. When possible, avoid conditions that can cause a skid. Test question here on the third bullet. These are common causes for skids: driving too fast for existing conditions, failing to anticipate traffic conditions, not understanding the operational characteristics of the vehicle, improper use of brakes and braking devices, improper tire inflation, and last but not least, poor vehicle maintenance. Know how to operate your vehicle in a skid. Most ambulance companies will take you out on a skid pad and show you how to avoid the skid or how to maneuver once you get into a skid to safely get out of the skid. Some vehicles may be equipped with anti-lock brakes and electronic stability control to help you prevent skids. In the event of a skid class, you should release the brakes, allow the tires to rotate to regain what we call rolling traction, okay, and direct the front wheels in the direction of the skid or the direction you want to travel. This means turning the vehicle into the skid and slowing without slamming on either the brakes or the accelerator. Now, if your vehicle starts to run off the roadway because you're negotiating a turn way too fast, do not overcorrect to try to get back on the road. Steer and take your foot off the gas. Do not apply the brakes hard. Gradually slow down and then gently turn the vehicle to re-enter the roadway. In the event of a tire failure or a blowout, okay, you're going to handle the same as you would a run off the highway. Do not hit the brakes. Steer as best you can and let the vehicle slow down. Park in a safe place and activate your warning devices. A lot of ambulances have safety triangles, reflective triangles that you're going to put out on the roadway. All right, 10 feet from the rear, 100 feet from that one, and then another 100 feet. All right, so this video that I'm going to play is from a public safety campaign to reduce risk to first responders. Let me see if I can get this YouTube video to play here. Can you see my screen? Can everybody see the video that's coming up?
Don't see the video yet.
Okay.
Sorry, bud. I'm getting a little late today. But don't worry. We'll get you there on time. Did you see the photos your sister posted?
Yeah, I was the first one she sent it to.
It's a big smile.
What are you smiling now?
You guys score a big goal from tonight, bud?
I'll try my best, Mom.
I know, that sounds awesome. Logan, oh my God, Logan, buddy. Ma'am, no way, I think she is. Where you are? Please make sure she's in the pool. Open your eyes for me. Sir, your son's name's Logan. Logan, open your eyes. Okay, Logan, I'm going to hold your neck here, okay? Don't move your head. Logan, can you hear me? We're done. But two basics, one more vehicle.
It was just after New Year's. We were
Esther,
about to go to the bar. It was my last night in Winnipeg
I don't
before
think
heading
it
back
looks
to
for me.
school. So we got in Adam's car to go there. We were driving down Bishop Grandin. It was cold. It was icy. It was windy. I did think that we were going too fast. Adam had a new car and he may have been trying to show off, or he may have just been driving too fast, but we were definitely going quite fast. We slid for quite a while on Bishop Grandin.
Sir, the video is showing.
Towards the ditch, so I had time to think that we were going to go into the ditch, and I was kind of hoping the trees would slow us down. And I thought of all that, and as I was thinking that, we hit the post.
Okay, so the whole purpose of those videos, can you see my screen now? We're back on the PowerPoint, correct?
Yeah, we
All
never saw the video.
You saw the video or you did not?
No, we could hear it, but the video part didn't come up.
Okay. All right. You saw the one on the ambulance though, right?
Not right now. There was no video.
No, of course not.
Oh, okay.
But on the ambulance, did you see the video regarding the ambulance is what I asked.
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. Did you see how the driver was walking back? He turned his back against the traffic and the car came and took him out. Did you see that? Alma, help me out here. Did you see that on the video?
This whole time we didn't see no video. We just saw your screen from the slides.
Okay. Let me hang on a minute. Let me try this one more time. Okay, so right now, what are you seeing on my screen?
Nothing, just slide.
The slides.
Okay, so let me do a new share screen. Now you can see it. See it?
Yes.
Okay, now watch what happens in this video. Okay, when the ambulance driver turns his back against traffic.
Sorry, bud. I'm getting a little late today. But don't worry. We'll get you there on time. You see the photos your sister posted?
Yeah, I was the first one she sent them to. Somebody is smiling now.
You gonna score a big goal from tonight, bud?
I'll try my best now.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Logan, oh my gosh, Logan, buddy. Ma'am, try not to know where I think she is. Where you are? Please switch this in the pool. Open your eyes for me. Sir, your son's name Logan? Logan, open your eyes. Okay, Logan, I'm going to hold your neck here, okay? Don't move your head. Logan, I need you. Really done. But 2 patients, one more critical one.
Everybody see that? You see how he made his fatal mistake? Okay, he turned his back on traffic instead of walking around the right side and coming around and getting in. He turned his back to traffic and he lost his life. In the world of emergency vehicle operation, that is called collateral damage, something in addition, okay, to the original accident. Never, ever turn your back on traffic, ever. All right, many states have adopted a move over law that and California has, by the way, 3 years ago. Many states have adopted a move over law that requires vehicles to move over or slow down when traveling in the lane adjacent to a stopped emergency vehicle. It is important to be familiar with the law in your state. It's also important to not assume all motorists will actually comply with this law. Always be extremely careful and wear highly visible personal protective equipment or PPE when working around traffic. Never ever turn your back on traffic. Okay, in New York State, the state troopers were authorized to not wear their hats or Stetsons on the Northway when a car stopped because the truckers had a deadly game of trying to weave near the troopers to blow off their hat. The game caused the death of a number of New York State highway patrolmen. Remember, working around traffic is always dangerous. Never assume the motorists are alert and sober. Never turn your back on traffic. All right, so you always want to position your vehicle upstream to protect the scene if you're the first arriving. All right, position downstream to protect the EMS crew and patient while working from and loading the ambulance. Make sure to leave room around the vehicles in a car wreck for fire and rescue workers. All right, let's take a look at this scenario right here in front of us. Okay, why is proper positioning of an emergency vehicle at the scene is so important? The figure on the slide in front of you shows proper ambulance positioning when the ambulance is the first on the scene or is operating alone. Now, when other units are on scene and the crew is ready to load the patients into the ambulance, then you're going to move the ambulance downstream so the collision acts as the barrier. Do not expose yourselves to oncoming traffic. Once the police car or once the police are on scene, let them deal with the traffic flow. On a multi-lane highway, an effort will be made to channel traffic flow away from the crash site or stop traffic altogether temporarily. Okay, notice here in this picture, okay, the number 1 lane blocking expands the protected area provided by the blocking vehicle. The Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices calls this the shadow area, affording a little more protection from traffic. That's why you see fire trucks always parking at an angle like this. Okay, because it forces the other vehicles away from the injured vehicle, from the disabled vehicle. Because if he was just to pull right up behind him and park parallel, somebody can run into the back of that fire truck and push him right into the ambulance. Right into the accident. Or if one of these firefighters turns their back on traffic, he can get hit by the car. All right, this is the shadow area, which affords a little more protection from the traffic. That's, again, this is why you see fire trucks park at an angle. Next time you're traveling on Interstate 10 and you see an accident, you see fire vehicles there, this is why the first arriving fire engine will park like this. If you were to show up in the ambulance, you would pull and park in front of this crashed vehicle. That's called parking downstream. Now, zero clearance areas should be avoided. Okay, responders should walk around the vehicle from behind and try to avoid this area. Motorists are attempting to change lanes, looking away from the scene at traffic as they merge, and then looking at the scene itself. Nobody is looking for you. This is why this scene right here in front of you is so dangerous. All right, this is another time you never want to turn your back on traffic. And this slide actually shows you the view from the other vehicles as they approach the scene of the accident. See, they can't really look at the accident until they're past it. And it also protects the scene as well. All right, you never want to walk in this area. I call this the kill zone. You stay out of this area. All right, let's take a look at this scene. This is a structure fire. When responding to the fire ground, leave the fire ground clear for the fire suppression operations. Okay, there's usually a staging area. Staging is the designated location for incoming ambulances to wait. Crews are usually told to remove specific equipment and leave keys with the officer. Transport. Ambulances are moved from the staging location to the transport section. As the incident de-escalates, more EMS crews are available to transport patients. In large mass casualty incidents, you may not get the original ambulance you arrived in. You need to ensure good access and egress. Always leave yourself an out. You may be the only ambulance on scene or part of a larger contingency, so don't allow yourself to get blocked in. Stay out of the fire ground. Do never drive over fire hoses laid in the street. Follow the directions of firefighters. Listen for radio traffic that may tell you to respond into the scene from a particular direction. Be aware, class, of additional units also responding to the assignment. As was discussed in the intersection section, the same thing applies to arriving on scene. Make sure someone, usually the incident commander, knows that you are on scene. Gather your equipment on a stretcher and proceed to the command post unless otherwise advised. Now, as an emergency vehicle operator, you should stay up to date on the lessons from other crashes. Several organizations, publish crash investigations for all of the emergency vehicle operators and fire departments and personnel to learn from. Some of them are, the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, known as NIOSH, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration Fatality Analysis Reporting System, the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration Special Crash Investigations, the National Transportation Safety Board, and the EMS Voluntary Event Notification Tool, known as EVENT. And you can, in fact, if you want, you can copy that website down, www.event.clirems.org. And you can look at some of the causes of crashes involving ambulances and learn from them. Now, I'm going to play this video, This video features a device cam footage of a collision between an ambulance and a parked car. The emergency vehicle operator in this video is distracted and takes his eyes off the road. Let's take a look at it here. There's no sound to this video, by the way. Let's play it one more time. See, it's all it took was a split second for him to take his eyes off the road. And in the driving course, we prove this. Your vehicle will tend to travel the way your eyes are. So if you notice the way he looked, that was the way that the vehicle drifted over and he hit the parked car. A lot of times on residential streets, the whole street itself is only 24 feet wide. Cars are usually 8 feet wide. So if you have that's 16 feet, if you have cars parked on both directions that are taking up the road, which only leaves you 8 feet to drive down the road in. So you have to be cognizant of this too. And this is why, again, my notes here said the driver that was operating this ambulance was fatigued and showed up to work after a night of partying. That's how quick an ambulance happens. You have to keep your head on a swivel and you're going to have to stay focused. Ambulances typically have a greater stopping distance than smaller vehicles on the road. This is why you have to know your vehicle and always maintain a proper following distance. Newer ambulances have been designed with technology to reduce the likelihood of a crash. All right, this is also a test question. They are equipped with external cameras. They have a black box recorders to monitor the vehicle operation parameters. They have devices that signal the driver with a sound in the cab. Some devices send emails to your supervisor as well. Adjustable seat placement and improved restraints, cargo netting, and secure equipment storage. They have curved and padded edges in the patient module, and they have traction stabilization controls. Studies have also shown that these technologies can reduce the likelihood of a collision and associated damage to the vehicle or occupants. Emergency vehicle visibility and conspicuity study highlights best practices in vehicle visibility. This includes retroreflective striping and passive reflectors called chevrons and high visibility paint for emergency response vehicles. The Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices published by the Federal Highway Administration defines the national standards for traffic control devices, road markings, and highway signs. High visibility paint on an emergency vehicle in daylight and at night. Take a look at the emergency vehicle visibility and conspicuity study done by FEMA in August of 2009. All right, now let's take a look at this video. This video class shows what happens during an ambulance crash with frontal impact. Imagine if you were in the back of that ambulance in the patient compartment. Even with these advances in emergency vehicle design and technology, it's going to be important to remember the most basic safety device, and that is restraints. All occupants should be properly restrained, including those working in the patient compartment and any passengers and patients inside the ambulance. Let's take a look at this video. This video shows a crash between an Amtrak train, believe it or not, and a fire apparatus, which parked on train tracks while responding to a call. Notice how long it took the train to stop. Let's take a look at this again. All right. This is why you never stop on railroad tracks, ever. All right, while you're looking at this video, at this picture, while responding to an emergency assignment, it may be necessary to travel left of center. Doing so is considered an exemption of the state vehicle and traffic laws. Here in California, it's 21055 of the Vehicle Code. While traveling left of center, the emergency vehicle operator must ensure that all requirements, are met to do so. An exemption may be used only for the time and duration of its need, and only if the ambulance is displaying red lights and siren together. You can't drive left of center just because you feel like it. Traffic must be blocking your path. An exemption may be used only in an emergency mode and only for the duration needed. The use of an exemption does not relieve the vehicle operator of the responsibility if you become involved in a collision. You need to ask yourself, because there's different answers based on the traffic conditions and the roadway conditions at the time of your response. What is the maximum speed when traveling left of center in urban and residential areas in this slide? Okay, my answer would be the maximum speed would be 20 miles per hour. Okay, but I would travel at 10 to 15 miles per hour. Okay, the vehicle operator is increasing closing distance duration and increasing reaction distance time by driving slower. Okay, if a collision does occur, the reduced speed will limit the amount of force exerted, reducing the amount of injury and damage. All right, let's take a look at this. When EMS is the first unit on scene, the emergency vehicle operator will position the vehicle in a manner that will block the scene and protect the crew from oncoming traffic. The vehicle is positioned 1.5 vehicle lengths away at a 45-degree angle with the wheels turned away from the incident. The rear of the vehicle is positioned away from the center of the roadway so that the crew can access equipment with minimal risk. The yellow triangle represents the shadow that is blocking, the vehicle creates from the other motorists. Loading of the patient is not performed until the ambulance is pulled downstream of the collision, so that the collision now acts as a block from approaching traffic, so you don't get run over like you saw in a couple of videos ago. This is where you'd position your ambulance if you were the first on scene. As other equipment and other agencies arrive on scene and take over this position, then you would move your ambulance downstream and in front of the accident to load your patient. In this slide, you could see how the blocking vehicle creates a shadow blocking the scene, from view. What are some other reasons why the vehicle is positioned at an angle? Well, I think we've already discussed this, and you should already know by now. It reduces the illusion that the vehicle may be traveling as well. It also increases visibility to approaching vehicles. Just like in the driving situation one, A unit is always blocking the scene and reduces the risk of responders being struck by other vehicles. In this slide, okay, the fire department pumper is positioned in an angled lane position, blocking the EMS crew from unnecessary exposure to traffic. Again, the shadow effect is created, forcing traffic to go around the scene. I also want you to note while you look at this, that the fire department pumper should not park in front of the address, but rather before it and allow the ambulance to park in front of the building for easier patient access and transport. Parking on the scene, that's a whole different subject. And they will cover that when you get into your training session on your fire department or your ambulance company. Let's take a look at this slide. From the street view, one can see how protection is afforded to the EMS crew. Okay, at what distance from the EMS crew would you want the fire department pumper to be parked? The correct answer for that would be far enough back so that if it is hit from behind, it would not be a hazard to the ambulance crew. So how would you want to position the fire pumper? Answer, angle with the wheels turned to the side so that way, if the fire truck is hit, it will be pushed away from the ambulance and not into the ambulance. Okay, this allows the EMS crew to load and unload the stretcher without fear of being hit. So in this particular picture, the fire truck, you'd want to make sure, okay, and again, when I was working on an ambulance, I always looked, which way are the tires turned on the fire truck? If they were turned to the right or if they were straight ahead, I asked the driver to get back in the fire truck and turn those wheels all the way to the left. That way, if they got hit from behind, guess what? Okay, the vehicle would be pushed away from the ambulance. Understand, class, the factors that contribute to crashes. Employ defensive driving techniques and safe driving. We talked about the 5 keys of defensive driving. You need to know those by heart for the exam. You need to respond to dangerous conditions properly. Never assume you have the right of way. The key to defensive driving is anticipation. Review the resources for crash reports and investigations, and understand the safety technology that's on the ambulance that you've been assigned to drive. Do I have any questions on this chapter? I think it was pretty cut and clear. Alma, let me ask you a question. What's one thing you took away from this lecture that you learned?
I'd say the part about like the shadow. It's kind of obvious, but now that you like stated it that it's there, it's made it much more clear. I can't really explain it, but yeah.
How about you, America? What's one thing you took away from today?
Aside from all the like taking precautions and all that, the end I found really important because it was in my, when I was taking my driver's test, I had trouble thinking of which way you needed to turn your wheel to, like on a hill or in general. So I really like the end.
Yeah, good. Rob, what did you take away?
There's a lot that goes into it, where it can happen so quickly, one of these accidents, and you have to really go through the steps really fast. The defensive driving, positioning your vehicle, and all the things that go in. I noticed in the videos, I really noticed in all the videos that they did not stop. They did not slow down when they approached the intersection. So what I took away was that's the most important thing, is to make sure you stop, make sure you get the whole picture.
If you, I tell you what, I've got some emails from students in this class asking for extra credit. Okay, and so there is some extra credit that I wanted to share with the class. it's 50 points, 50 points, which means if your grade on the final is a 50%, okay, and you get 50 points extra credit, it bounces your grade from an F to an A. Okay, so this extra credit is not required, nor if you choose not to do it, it does not impact your grade. Does everybody understand that? If you choose to participate, then it only helps your grade. All right. So the extra credit is that I was notified by the Yermo Fire and EMS department that they are having a community cleanup day on Saturday, March 20th. Okay. And so they asked me to ask the students, because I do it every semester, and this class is going to be no different. If you want to participate in it's called the Yermo Community Cleanup. You'll be working along EMTs and ambulance operators and firefighters. And it's you'll be manning like one of the cleanup stations where the citizens will come over and drop off tires and stuff like that. But here's why it's advantageous. Let's just forget about the extra credit points for a minute. If you are seeking a career in EMS or the fire, or you're trying to get into nursing school, I sit on all the boards, the interview boards, even for nursing, okay, because I'm on faculty and they have faculty members. The biggest question that's worth the most points is this. Well, what volunteer experiences you've done for an underserved community? You want to know what most people say? None. If you were applying for a position on a fire department, that was worth 25 points towards your oral interview score. Okay, so, and what we do is we give you a certificate that shows that you volunteered for the 8 hours or the 6 hours or whatever. We also provide you lunch. So if you're interested in doing this, because I make it available to every class. This class is included. Send me an email and just say, Jim, I'm interested in volunteering for the cleanup, the Yermo. Yermo spelled Y-E-R-M-O, Yermo. Okay, and I will give you the address from College of the Desert to Yermo, because I'm also the fire chief up there as well. Okay, it takes me an hour and 48 minutes to get there. Okay, and that is from the traffic circle at COD to Yermo. I will send you the address and a point of contact. Okay, and you'll get a fire department certificate showing that you volunteered and helped. Now, little history about Yermo. Yermo is the poorest community in the Silver Valley District, and it's the poorest community and the poorest county of the state. We have people, Yermo was an old railroad town, okay, and US 93 was Yermo Road, and that was before they put in Interstate 15. Yermo is also home to the Calico Ghost Town, the largest gold mine and silver mine in California. That's within our area of responsibility. So again, I will send you the address, the point of contact, all that to call. We start at 8 o'clock on March 20th in Yermo. So if you've had any absences, that will make up for the day of absence plus your 50 extra credit points. Okay, and please understand, it has nothing to do with a grade penalty. Okay, if you do go, it only helps you grade. If you don't go, no big deal. It does not hurt your grade at all. Okay, it has nothing to do with College of the Desert, except that I have College of the Desert Fire Academy guys up there working. But it's just an opportunity to give students who are desiring a career in nursing, EMS, and fire to actually answer the question truthfully and say, yes, I went up and volunteered at a fire and EMS agency during their community cleanup day, And here's my certificate of appreciation that shows that I did that. And here's how many hours signed by their local fire chief. So again, does everybody understand that it is not mandatory? It has nothing to do with the class. If you don't go, there's no grade penalty. If you do go, it only increases your grade through extra credit points because it is EMS related. You are going to be out at an EMS agency and you're going to be working alongside. So it does have to do with what we're studying. It's just another opportunity to give you to be out in the field, working with people that were in your shoes 2 or 3 semesters ago and are up there working now. So with that said, let's take roll call. Okay. And you all have my email address, right? So if you want to go, give me an email and then I'll get you hooked up with Captain Tony Mareb and Director of Community Services, Debbie Shield. And we'll get you in and get you your certificate and you'll have fun. Yermo is also famous for the first Del Taco. Yeah, it's opened up in 1950. The 2 brothers, and then when they opened up Interstate 15, it took all the traffic off US 93, which is now Yermo Road, and Del Taco closed their first stand and moved it down to Barstow along the side of the freeway. Well, now all of my fire and EMS guys went up there and they repainted it and put the original Del Taco sign there, and it's called the Burger Den now. They're going to feed you when you're up there, so you'll get a little bit of history there. Okay, and then we can take you up and give you a tour of the gold mine and the Calico Ghost Town. It's a fun day. It's really a great day. You'll walk away. If you love to eat, that's the place to go. Make sure you wear your pants with the elastic strap in it, because you'll probably have a lot of good homemade fudge up there as well. All right, so let's take roll call now. Okay, let me share the screen. Let's see, where can I go here? Give me a minute to pull up the screen. Okay, College of the Desert. All right, Emily.
I'm here.
And Skylar, you're here. Marilyn.
Here.
America's here. Robert, you're here. Jeremiah.
Here.
Elaine. Herman.
Here.
Mackenzie.
Here.
Bianca.
Here.
Marissa. Robert. Anika.
Here.
And Alma.
Here.
Is there anybody that, how can I word this? Is there anybody that was absent last week that watched the video that I did not correct your attendance?
Excuse me, sir, for the February 26th class?
Yes.
I don't believe that was corrected.
Okay, let's take a
least for-
look at it. Let's take a look at it. Who am I speaking with?
Oh, it's Herman, sir.
Herman?
Yes, that's it.
All right. Anybody else?
Me as well, Professor. I watched the video.
Yeah, Bianca, is that you?
Oh no, it's me, Emily. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Emily. All right. Where are you at? Up here at the top. Okay. Anybody else? Do we need to reconcile? Bianca.
Yeah.
I think all of us felt alone last on the 26th. Anybody else?
Last week I wasn't here either, but I watched the video.
And that's Mackenzie, correct? I think I recognize the voice. Mackenzie, where are you at? You're here. Oh, that was last week, right?
Yes.
Okay, hang on. Let's move. All right, Mackenzie. Anybody else? What about you, Marissa? Okay, that's it. All right, so let me, this is going to conclude, don't leave, I'm just saying this for the recording. This is going to conclude the lesson for today in Ambulance EVOC EMR 081.